What if the most powerful religious institution in the world was guarding a secret so ancient, so shocking, that it could alter how we view history, faith, and even humanity itself? Beneath the marble floors of Vatican City, below the grandeur of St. Peter's Basilica, lies a hidden world, one carved in stone, whispered in shadows, and silenced by centuries of power. This isn't fiction. This is a story drawn from fragments, testimonies, and facts too uncomfortable to make it to Sunday sermons. Because the truth is, the Vatican has always known more than it revealed. And sometimes, silence is the loudest response. So today, we go deep, far deeper than the Vatican grottos or the catacombs, to uncover what may have been found beneath the Vatican, and why no one ever spoke about it. Ready? Let's begin. It began with a tremor, not the kind that topples statues or cracks stained glass windows, but a vibration so subtle it passed unnoticed by the crowds of tourists lining up to admire the Sistine Chapel. Yet beneath the Vatican, in the depths of sealed corridors and forbidden crypts, seismic monitors whispered a different story. The year was 1972, and a small group of Vatican engineers, working under strict confidentiality, was dispatched to inspect what was initially believed to be minor structural instability near the foundations of the Apostolic Palace. What they uncovered was not weakness but a void, a chamber, completely sealed, unmapped, unnamed, and strangely, untouched by time. The walls were not made of the same stone used in Vatican construction. They were older, ancient. The markings on them, symbols unlike Latin, Greek, or Aramaic, were immediately documented and sent to the Vatican's Archivum Secretum. Yet no response came, only silence, and then instructions: halt excavation, fill it in, say nothing. But not everyone obeyed. Among the engineers was a young Jesuit-trained archaeologist, Father Lorenzo Albanese, who had joined the inspection team as a historical advisor. Fascinated by the mystery, he returned alone the following night, documenting what little he could before the chamber was sealed forever. His notes, discovered decades later in a forgotten archive, hinted at something astonishing: a large stone tablet bearing a humanoid figure with wings not of angels, but of beasts. Beside it, carvings of celestial maps, including stars only discovered by modern astronomy in the last century. This finding would have been revolutionary. A pre-Christian depiction of the cosmos, a figure straddling the line between divinity and something else, something alien perhaps. But those records never reached the public. Instead, Father Albanese was reassigned to a remote mission in rural Argentina, and within months disappeared. Officially, he drowned in a flood, but no body was ever recovered. The chamber was resealed, and the Vatican moved on, or so it seemed. In the years that followed, strange coincidences began to accumulate. In 1985, a secret internal document leaked by a former Swiss guard detailed protocols for containment of subterrestrial anomalies. The Vatican denied its authenticity, claiming it was a forgery. Yet multiple independent researchers confirmed details in the document that only someone with internal access could have known. Why would the Vatican create a protocol for something it claims doesn't exist? Because deep down, beneath layers of ritual, dogma, and tradition, it might have stumbled upon something far older than the Church itself. Archaeologists have long suspected that Vatican Hill was once the site of pre-Roman worship. Shrines, altars, even burial sites far older than St. Peter himself. What if the Vatican's foundations were laid not just upon Christian relics, but upon ancient knowledge deliberately hidden from the world? Some believe the chamber found in 1972 was part of a forgotten underground complex, one tied to the Etruscans, or perhaps even an unknown civilization. Others go further, suggesting it may be linked to the infamous Library of Alexandria. Not all of its scrolls were destroyed in the fire. Some, they say, were taken, preserved, hidden. Where better to keep them than under the watchful eye of the most powerful religious institution in the world? More than once, whistleblowers have claimed that beneath the Vatican lies a vault known as Il Livello Zero, a level zero forbidden to all but the highest-ranking members of the Curia. Rumored to contain artifacts deemed too dangerous for the world to see, skulls of impossible size, scrolls written in unknown languages, and perhaps even technology, or what appears to be technology, from civilizations that predate any known history. And always there is the silence. The official stance is firm. These are myths, conspiracy, fantasy. But why then, in 1999, did the Vatican issue a classified communiqué regarding unexplained light emissions in the necropolis? And why did no fewer than 6 guards resign from service in the following month, citing psychological distress? These are not fairy tales, they are patterns, repeated attempts to suppress, redirect and erase. Still there are cracks. Still there are cracks. Small leaks in the dam of secrecy. In 2004, a French journalist embedded in the Vatican press office overheard a conversation between 2 Monsignori referring to La Sala del Silenzio, the room of silence. Not a chapel, but a sealed chamber below the apostolic archives, allegedly soundproof and shielded from all radio signals. Why would such a room exist beneath a place of worship unless there was something inside that must not be heard? She followed the trail, quietly interviewing dismissed clergy, archivists, and retired Swiss guards. One described what he saw during a security sweep in the lower levels. A black obelisk, cold to the touch, etched with unfamiliar symbols, pulsing faintly in the dark. He was transferred within a week. If this was simply religious law, why would so many lives be affected? Why would careers vanish, assignments change overnight, or priests be shipped off to remote corners of the globe? What is the Vatican so afraid the world might discover? In 2, we enter the realm of deeper speculation, but always tethered to evidence. Consider this. In 1939, shortly before the outbreak of World War II, Pope Pius X ordered a special excavation beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Officially, the goal was to locate the tomb of St. Peter. Unofficially, rumors suggest something else. The excavation team reportedly discovered not just one tomb, but an entire network of corridors leading to chambers that predated Rome itself. These weren't just burial sites. They were sites of ritual. Strange altars, symbols never before catalogued by Christian scholars, whispers of gods without names. What frightened them wasn't just the architecture, it was the implications. These structures pointed to an advanced, organized culture, deeply spiritual and operating in Rome centuries before the rise of the empire. The Vatican paused the dig. Documents were locked away. And years later, when the findings were presented to a small group of scholars under Vatican oath, the conclusion was chilling. What lies beneath is not merely older than we thought, it is other. The term other appears again and again in Vatican documentation, never explained, always implied. One declassified report from 1963 references entity markers embedded in stone, radiating low-frequency energy. Another speaks of temporal distortions experienced by those who spent extended time in a particular sub-level. One Swiss guard recounted losing 15 minutes of time while patrolling a sealed corridor. His watch had stopped. His radio crackled with a language he could not recognize. The next day he was reassigned to perimeter duty. What kind of anomaly makes time skip? What kind of chamber interferes with language? And what happens to a church when it realizes it might not be the first to speak to God, or what lies beyond God? In the 3rd, we begin to see a pattern not just of suppression, but of careful integration. For decades, the Vatican has collected artifacts from across the world. Ancient relics, mysterious codices, even objects some believe to be not of this earth. A 1987 letter between Cardinal Ratzinger and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences refers obliquely to non-anthropogenic texts stored in the Archivio Segreto. What does that mean? Writings not created by humans. Are they natural phenomena or something else entirely? The Vatican Observatory, located in Castel Gandolfo, has long collaborated with astronomers on the study of deep space. But in recent years, they've become increasingly interested in exoplanets, worlds that might host life. Jesuit astronomers have publicly speculated on the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, stating that the existence of alien life would not contradict Catholic theology. A bold claim, unless the Church already had reason to believe such life exists, or once did or made contact long ago. In 2011, a controversial manuscript surfaced. allegedly copied from a suppressed text known only as Codex Aeternum. This codex, according to those who've seen it, describes a being of light who descended from the heavens before the flood, bringing knowledge to a select group of humans. The descriptions are eerily similar to modern-day accounts of close encounters: radiant entities, glowing eyes, a voice that speaks without sound. Could it be that what ancient people called angels were something more technological? The Book of Enoch, long excluded from the canonical Bible, describes similar figures, the Watchers, beings who descended and shared secrets with mankind. Why was this book excluded for centuries? Was it merely theological bias or deliberate omission? As we move into IV, we touch the edges of something even more profound. Several researchers believe that the Vatican's real secret isn't just knowledge of past civilizations or even contact with other beings. It's that humanity has done this before, that history moves in cycles, that there was a time before time, and beneath the Vatican lies a memory of that previous world, a world destroyed. In 2009, a former Vatican archivist anonymously released pages from what he called the Chronicon. In it, a tale is told of a civilization that reached the stars, then fell, consumed by pride and division. Their knowledge was buried, scattered, and hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be rediscovered by the next cycle. The Vatican, according to this text, was not built to hide God's truth, but to protect humanity from its own repeating mistakes. What if the Vatican isn't hiding the truth about God? What if it's hiding the truth about us? What if everything we know, our linear idea of progress, our pride in being the pinnacle of civilization, is just a phase in a repeating cycle we've forgotten? A cycle where humanity rises, reaches for the divine, touches it, and falls. Again and again. And beneath the Vatican they found the proof of this forgotten rhythm. Relics from another epoch, one not found in textbooks or scripture. Perhaps this is why the Church guards its underground so fiercely, not out of control but out of fear. Fear of what might happen if the world remembered. There are reports, never confirmed but disturbingly consistent, of objects sealed away in lead-lined vaults far below ground level, items that distort compasses, manuscripts that cannot be carbon dated, stones that vibrate at frequencies no scientist can explain. What kind of knowledge do these objects carry? And more importantly, what kind of warnings? One account speaks of a circular room with a domed ceiling, filled with what appeared to be ancient machines, devices too corroded to function, yet still emanating low heat. Along the walls, frescoes not of saints or biblical scenes, but of stars, galaxies, and what seemed like portals, a visual story not of salvation, but of travel, movement between worlds. Some believe this room was part of a larger structure that collapsed long ago, a remnant of something that predates religion altogether. When questioned, Vatican officials remain firm. These are legends, but legends often hold fragments of truth, encoded in myth to survive the censorship of time. In V, we encounter the most haunting idea of all, that some within the Vatican believe these discoveries are not just archaeological, they re-prophetic. In 2012, a leaked internal sermon delivered in Latin referred to the Age of Unveiling and the return of the luminous ones. It spoke of a time when knowledge buried would rise again, when the veil would thin. It warned that this event could shatter the pillars of all world religions, not destroy faith but redefine it. Could this be why the Vatican has started slowly shifting its tone? Why modern popes have made cautious statements about extraterrestrial life, evolution, and even multiverses? Perhaps they are preparing us for a truth too large to drop all at once. And here lies the dilemma. If beneath the Vatican there exists physical evidence that humanity is not alone, that it has been visited, shaped, and perhaps warned, who gets to decide when we're ready to know? What gives any institution, no matter how holy, the right to choose what truths are shared? One priest interviewed in secrecy said this: "We found something. I'm not allowed to say what, but I'll tell you this. It changed everything I believed, not about God, but about what came before him." In Cease, we must ask ourselves a difficult question. If you were in their position, if you discovered undeniable proof that human history was far more ancient, more advanced and more guided than we ever imagined. Would you tell the world? Or would you protect it? What if humanity isn't ready? What if belief systems would collapse? What if peace would fracture into chaos? Or what if the truth would set us free? Some say the Vatican is guarding a doorway, both literal and symbolic, a passage to knowledge, power, memory. Others claim it's not just a doorway but a prison, that something is being kept inside, not to be protected, but to be contained. An energy, a being, an artifact of such immense potential that it cannot under any circumstance be allowed to see the light of day. The term used in certain documents is custos umbrae, the shadow keeper. If that sounds like myth, remember that for centuries the Church believed in demons, exorcisms, possessions. Even today it maintains a secret rite of exorcism and trains priests to battle what it calls manifestations of evil. But what if some of those demons were misunderstood encounters with something else, something ancient, perhaps even interdimensional? And what if the Vatican didn't defeat it? What if it simply locked it away? Deep beneath the surface, in stone chambers older than the language used to describe them, we may have imprisoned something not of our world. Or maybe it's part of us, the part we've spent millennia trying to forget. There are whispers in theological circles, always behind closed doors, that the greatest danger is not what lies beneath the Vatican, but what it represents. A mirror, a reflection of something buried not just in the earth, but in the collective psyche of humankind. One retired cardinal, in a private letter never meant for public eyes, wrote, "The vault is a wound, a reminder, that we have been more than once, and each time we forget." Could that be the true nature of the chamber sealed in 1972? Not just a room, but a memory carved in stone, hiding the truth that civilization is a cycle, not a straight line. That knowledge is never lost, only buried, waiting, watching. In Victit, we confront the last, most disturbing idea, that perhaps the silence of the Vatican is not because of what they know, but because of what they don't see. What if even they are afraid? What if the things unearthed defy not only theology but reason itself? There are unofficial testimonies, rare, fragmented, impossible to verify, that speak of dreams, visions, priests assigned to lower levels waking in the night, sweating, with eyes that seem to stare through walls. One guard, now living in seclusion, claimed he no longer saw people the same way after a week-long shift deep beneath the Basilica. Their faces, he said, were masks, and behind them something waited. Was it madness, or was it proximity to something ancient and sentient? Because that's the final theory, the one no one dares speak aloud, that something beneath the Vatican isn't dead. It isn't just a remnant or a relic, it is alive. Maybe not in the way we understand life, but in the way consciousness can stretch across dimensions, across time. That maybe, just maybe, something has been watching us through the cracks in stone, and we, unknowingly, built a city of worship on top of it. Perhaps not by coincidence. What if, all along, the Vatican was chosen, not as the seat of God, but as the lid of a box that once opened would not bring judgment, but memory, the memory of what we were, and the price we paid for becoming gods. What then? Because to look beneath the Vatican is not just to dig through history, it's to dig through the illusion. And if you go deep enough, you might find that what's hidden isn't just physical. It's truth. Truth we buried because it terrified us. Truth that says we are not alone. Truth that says we were never the first, and that somewhere beneath centuries of faith, marble, blood, and silence, it waits. So, what did the Vatican find beneath the Vatican and never speak about? Maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's 1,000 things. Chambers of forgotten history, glimpses of ancient intelligence, echoes of fallen worlds, and shadows of our own future. Maybe it's a warning, or maybe it's an invitation to remember. In the end, the most powerful secrets are not the ones kept from us. They're the ones we choose not to ask about, because deep down, part of us already knows, and that part has been whispering for centuries. Don't dig. It began not with a discovery, but with a question. A quiet, almost forgotten inquiry posed by a Vatican librarian in the early 1950s, while cataloguing old codices inherited from a demolished monastery in southern Italy. Among the brittle pages of a 13th century manuscript, he found an anomaly, a single inserted page written in a different hand, a different ink, and a different language. It described a door without hinges, carved in stone that drinks light, located directly beneath the altar of an ancient Roman temple, upon which St. Peter's Basilica now stood. That alone would have warranted curiosity, but what made it unsettling was what came after, a warning, a plea really, that the door remain closed, that whatever speaks without breath should not be awakened. The librarian, a Jesuit by the name of Father Michel Renzi, quietly brought the page to his superior. It was dismissed as apocryphal nonsense, but Renzi couldn't let it go. Over the years he compiled other references, obscure footnotes, marginalia, old maps overwritten by the Church itself. The deeper he went, the more he found that all paths seemed to lead not just beneath the Vatican, but to a very specific point, a location never shown on any official plans, yet often hinted at in whispers, La Croce Silente, or the Silent Cross. In 2, the reality of this place begins to take shape. The Silent Cross, according to reconstructed records from suppressed documents, is not a cross in the literal sense. It is a crossroads, an intersection of corridors deep underground, beneath layers of catacombs sealed off for centuries. The name appears in at least 5 banned texts held in restricted Vatican libraries. All of them refer to it with the same reverence and fear. Where the world's bones remember, reads one. Another simply calls it the wound beneath the throne. Renzi eventually vanished. The official explanation was tuberculosis and reassignment to a care facility. But colleagues later admitted he had grown paranoid, claiming that voices were coming through his office walls, that old books were moving on their own, and that the floor beneath his desk was warmer than the rest of the room. His private journals, only discovered decades later, describe dreams of a faceless figure standing at the crossroads, always in shadow, always pointing down. In the thread, the question becomes whether this is truly legend, or if it hints at something physical, something still present today. And here, things take a stranger turn. During the restoration of St. Peter's Basilica in the 1990s, workers found an inconsistency in the foundation, a corridor bricked off not by time, but deliberately, with modern cement. It wasn't listed on any blueprint. When asked, Vatican officials claimed it was irrelevant. But one curious worker, an Italian man named Matteo Albani, returned after hours with a portable camera. What he filmed was only a few seconds long before the footage cut to static, but it showed a tunnel sloping downward, with walls that shimmered faintly in the dark. The cement had been scored with claw-like patterns, as if something inside had tried to escape. Albani disappeared 3 days later. His wife was told he'd taken a job in Argentina. No such job existed. What is being protected down there? And why do those who get too close always vanish? In IV, we begin to understand that the Vatican's secrecy is not passive. It is organized. It is active. There is, according to multiple leaked documents and whistleblower testimonies, an internal unit called the Congregatio Umbrae, the Congregation of the Shadow. Their role is not theological, it is protective. Their purpose, containment. Containment of what? Not evil necessarily, but influence. A source of knowledge so foreign to the human mind that direct exposure is said to cause sensory dissonance, time loss, and even hallucinations. The Church doesn't call it technology nor divinity. They use the term interference, as if contact with the thing alters the very structure of reality. Imagine that, a relic so powerful that it can twist memory, bend thought, disrupt time. Would you worship it or fear it? This brings us to V, and a theory long circulated among those who study ancient sacred geometry, that the Vatican was not placed randomly, that beneath the Vatican lies a convergence point, not just of Earth's magnetic lines, but of something deeper, something energetic, a resonance point between dimensions. This belief is often dismissed as pseudoscience, yet curious facts remain. Why did so many ancient temples choose this hill long before Christianity arrived? Why were their altars always aligned in the same direction? And why, after 2 millennia, is no one allowed to dig beyond a certain depth? Perhaps they've reached the bottom, or perhaps they've reached something bottomless. One priest, anonymously interviewed in 2017, said this: "We don't look anymore, not because we found everything, but because we found too much." In VI, we begin to understand the psychological impact. It's not just about the physical danger of opening sealed chambers, it's the mental toll. Recovered audio logs from 1983 reveal a team of Vatican researchers descending into a restricted crypt. The first few minutes are normal, technical chatter, descriptions of symbols, but then the audio changes. Static, whispers. Then a voice, speaking fluent Latin, yet with an accent that doesn't match any known dialect. A voice that answered questions before they were asked. After that recording, all 5 team members were sent to different monasteries under vows of silence. They never spoke again. Literally, they lost the ability to speak, with no medical explanation. What kind of presence can strip language from the mind? And why is it still there under the most sacred institution on earth? Perhaps what the Vatican fears most is not the thing itself, but what it implies. That there is no final truth, only deeper layers. That God, as we understand him, may be only the most familiar mask of something far more complex. The documents retrieved from suppressed Vatican files often reference the concept of meta-divinity, a force or intelligence beyond the divine, not malevolent, not benevolent, but utterly incomprehensible. An intelligence that does not care about salvation, morality, or scripture, but only resonance, cycles, contact. One cardinal reportedly said in private, "It is not that God does not exist, it is that he is not alone." That statement alone would be enough to fracture centuries of theological certainty. But what if it's true? What if the Vatican's deepest secret is that creation is older than Genesis, that humanity is not the first species to seek meaning, and that something, some force, remembers all those who have come before? In 8, we arrive at the darkest moment in the narrative, not a single discovery, not a forbidden chamber, but an event. An incident that occurred on October 13, 1977, completely unreported, classified beyond even papal access, referred to in only one known document as Evento Gregoriano. According to the redacted text, a team of archivists was granted access to an unsealed chamber for the first time in over 500 years. What happened inside remains unclear. The document ends with 2 lines. Time ruptured, coordinates shifted. 3 men did not return. What does that mean? Did they die? Did they vanish? Or did something more inexplicable occur, something that transcended the physical? There are rumors of an object recovered from that chamber. Not gold, not scrolls, but a cube of black material that absorbed all light. No one could touch it. Those who approached felt nauseated, disoriented. A single researcher placed her hand too close and immediately collapsed. Her report, written afterward under medical care, claimed she had seen all time at once, and that the cube was listening. To this day, no one knows where the cube is. Some say it's buried under a monastery in Poland. Others believe it's kept in orbit aboard a classified satellite. But many believe it's still there, below the Vatican, behind layers of walls and scripture and silence. Waiting. In 9, we must face a possibility that is almost too vast to accept. That what the Vatican is hiding is not an object or a history or even a truth. It is a threshold, a border, a place where our reality grows thin and another begins, a liminal zone, a soft spot in the fabric of the world, and through that soft spot, something calls, not in words, but in patterns, in geometry, in time loops, in dreams. Some believe the chamber below is the original tabernacle, not of the Jews, not of the Christians, but of the earth itself, a point of contact between this world and the next, say a cosmic archive, a consciousness beyond understanding. And perhaps this is why the Church has kept silent, not out of control, but reverence, not fear, but awe. What if they're not hiding a secret? What if they're guarding a sacred wound? And what if opening it, truly opening it, would not unleash demons but show us the mirror? A mirror that reveals what we truly are, and what we have always been, not rulers, not sinners, not even children of God, but echoes of something that existed before time. And perhaps if we listen closely enough, we might hear that echo calling us home. There comes a point when a secret becomes so heavy that it no longer needs chains to stay hidden. It hides itself in plain sight, disguised as myth, as architecture, as tradition. That is the genius of what lies beneath the Vatican. It was never buried to be forgotten. It was buried to be remembered, but only by those who were ready to see. And the Church has spent centuries perfecting the art of delay. Not suppression, not denial, delay. Just long enough for the rest of the world to catch up. We begin with a whisper. In 2020, a researcher at the Pontifical Gregorian University received a package with no return address. Inside were three things: a key, a photograph of a carved archway beneath the Vatican marked with the symbol of the Vesica Piscis, and a note that simply read, "You've already been here in your dreams." The photograph was old, clearly taken decades ago, and showed not only the symbol, but also faint inscriptions along the arch, inscriptions not in Latin, Greek, or Hebrew. When cross-referenced with known languages, they most closely resembled Linear A, an undeciphered script from the ancient Minoan civilization. How could a Minoan symbol be beneath the Vatican? The researcher, intrigued, contacted a Jesuit mentor, who dismissed it but warned him gently, "There are doors here you can close once you see them." That phrase stayed with him, because the key in the envelope matched one of the blank doors within the lower archives. When he tried it, the lock clicked, not open but inward, like pressure shifting in the air. And that's when things started happening. Time became unreliable. Sounds from above, footsteps, bells, whispers, echoed in impossible directions. The walls seemed to breathe. And most disturbing of all, the photograph he had received began to change, slowly, over days. The symbol glowed faintly. The inscriptions grew clearer, as if they were being rewritten from inside the image. In the two, we find an old name resurface, Codex Lux, a volume spoken of in hushed tones by archivists who'd been too long underground. No one had ever claimed to see it directly. Some believed it wasn't even a physical book, but an interface, a living document that could only be read by those the chamber deemed worthy. The codex was said to contain no text, only light patterns, spirals, pulses, shifting shapes. Those who tried to interpret it lost their sense of time. One man described seeing his own death over and over again, from every angle. The Vatican officially denies the existence of the Codex Lux, but curiously, its name appears in a handwritten margin in the Book of Kells, a Celtic manuscript predating modern Christianity. That same margin also includes a diagram, faint, childlike, of what looks like Earth surrounded by 9 concentric rings, each marked with an unfamiliar sigil. Some believe those rings correspond to levels not of heaven or hell, but of reality itself, and that the chamber beneath the Vatican is the entrance to the fourth. In the third we move into testimony. A nun transferred to a secluded convent in the 1980s broke her vow of silence after 30 years to describe a light beneath the floor in her early years of service. She had been taken there once, blindfolded, told it was for prayer. But she remembered the floor humming and her ears filling with voices, not terrifying but singing in tones that made her cry without understanding why. She said it felt like someone was touching her memories, as if her past had opened like a book. She had no idea where she had been taken, only that afterward she dreamed for weeks of a city made of stars and a sky that bled gold. She was told never to speak of it again, but she did just once before she died. What kind of chamber does not speak, but sings? What kind of light touches your soul without casting a shadow? In IV, we reach the edge of language. Many who have tried to describe what is hidden beneath the Vatican resort to metaphor, labyrinth, garden, mirror, womb. One theologian called it the scar where God once stood. Another described it as the first alphabet, not a place but a structure of meaning. The origin of symbols, the birthplace of story itself. And perhaps this is the true reason for the silence. Because what was found is not just dangerous in its physical form, but in what it represents. If it is real, it means our languages, our myths, even our dreams are not original. They were seeded, planted, grown from contact with something far older. In V, the most unsettling theory emerges, that the Vatican itself was built as a containment field, not over a relic, but over a signal, that beneath the stones and relics and saints and bones lies a pulse, a rhythm, still vibrating through time. And the rituals, the incense, the bells, the repetition, they aren't just religious, they're resonance control, a way to keep the frequency below the threshold, to keep the world asleep. Because if the frequency rises, we might wake up. And if we wake up, we might remember. Remember what we were before the fall, before the forgetting, before the veil. So now you know, or at least you've glimpsed the edges of it, a secret not buried by time, but by intent. Not because it was evil, but because it was too much. Too much for a world still struggling to understand itself. The Vatican is not just a monument to faith, it's a monument to memory. A memory so old that even stone cannot contain it without cracking. Beneath the prayers, the rituals, the relic, there is something deeper, a signal, a scar, a mirror. Maybe the real secret isn't what the Vatican found, but why they stayed silent. Because sometimes silence isn't denial. Sometimes silence is mercy. But the world is changing. Frequencies are rising. Ancient things are stirring. And maybe, just maybe, the time for silence is over. Maybe it's time we remember. Maybe it's time we ask the question they never wanted to answer. What lies beneath? And why are we so afraid to look?